afternoon. It is Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Welcome. This is a school board meeting briefing and the time is 2:33 p.m. Has the front lobby been cleared? Yes. Board members Giovanelli and Patrica are joining us via Zoom this afternoon. Today's agenda includes RSM policy review, job descriptions, 10-year capital plan, agenda review January 9th, public comment, good of the order, and board member comments and reports. We are going to begin this afternoon with RSM. This afternoon, we welcome Director Matthew Blondell and Manager Weiss Campbell.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us back. When we last met with the board in December, we discussed our audit plan for the upcoming 2024 year. The board at that time approved a portion of the audit plan, including the physical security audit, which we did start in December, and are happy to say that we've been making some progress in working through the initial phases of that audit. I believe the board had some questions about the remaining audit plan, and certainly happy to address any questions that you have now, and now that you've had perhaps a bit more time to digest that information.
Board members, do you have any comments or questions at this time? I'm just making sure that Ms. Giovanelli and Patrica have not called in yet. Ms. Patrica is on. Ms. Patrica, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And as your board auditor, every one of you, please feel free to reach out to us at any time if you have any questions. We will have a dashboard forthcoming. I believe this week is when it's due. So Friday, be on the lookout for that.
All right, thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
The next item on our agenda I have is policy review. This is the first reading of the policies listed in the agenda. We welcome School Board Attorney and General Counsel, Ms. DuPay Bruno.
Thank you. Good afternoon and
welcome.
Happy New Year. And Benny, you're going to go up there. Board members, you've been pre-briefed on these policies in the past. I don't know if you have any questions on them.
Board members, do you have any questions at this time for Attorney DuPay Bruno? Ms. Morgan.
So I sent an email to Dr. Bernier and Attorney DuPay Bruno about policy, 6322, which deals with construction contracting, and asked the question about the P3 process and the process documents. And I don't know if you responded just to me, Attorney DuPay Bruno, or to everybody.
So I responded specifically with regards to your email to you solely, Ms. Morgan, but I also sent an email to the board advising that there is a P3 policy that is forthcoming, and within that policy there will be some additional processes, which is a little different, but because of the nature of that policy would include some processes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the whole board had had an opportunity to hear your response to that. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Ms. Patrica, do you have any questions regarding the policies?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
So at this time, Madam Chairman, if we could ask the board whether or not we can move these policies to second reading.
Board, can you confirm that you are ready for that? Thumbs up? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bernier.
So related to Ms. Morgan's question, I think it's important to talk about where procedures begin to get developed. We would not, up until this point, we would not have begun to change our procedures in order to follow your policy. Now that this has moved to a second reading with minimum, or in this case, no changes, the constructions procurement facilities team, the construction committee, will begin to look at this particular policy and begin to adjust the policies for bidding and construction process and making sure that they align. So in this particular case, I believe Ms. Morgan requested to be able to see those procedures when they are complete. So as soon as they're even finished in draft form, I'll make sure that I share that with the entire board.
My real concern was not about the construction process. It was more about the P3 in response to what had transpired with Hector Caparetta. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dupre-Bruno. On the next item is job descriptions. Presenting today is our new Chief Human Resources Officer, Angela Martamarano.
Oh, yes, there we go. So as you all received the communications of the job descriptions that we are presenting to review, I would like to note on 2 of the job descriptions, just to highlight the Executive Director of Safety, Security, and Emergency Management. The highlight on this change to this job description is changing that the person would maintain the necessary qualifications and certifications to carry a weapon in accordance with district policies and state law. So that's the change on that. The ESOL specialist, this was a part of the immigrant grant that was approved by the board at the beginning of the year, I guess that was 23. So that is the job description listed there. And as a part of the HR transformation, you have the HR job descriptions that I have put forth. Some of them are replacement and others are some new ones. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Board members, do you have any questions at this time?
I would just like to welcome you and thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much, because I know that I had questions regarding this, and when we spoke, you clarified all that, so I appreciate that conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Ms. Morgan.
And I will just weigh in also. We had a great conversation this afternoon. I'm excited to see Ms. Montemarano. This is going to take a while. I apologize.
Okay.
But I'm excited to see you here and have an opportunity to talk with you and get a sense of what's driving you. So thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Ms. Patrica. Do you have any questions at this time? Okay, I do not have any questions either at this time, but welcome to Lee County School District. We're happy to have you. Next on the agenda is the 10-year capital plan. We're going to give some time to the presenters today to get up here. We are going to hear from Dr. Amy Desamore, our Chief Financial Officer, Larry Stevens, Chief Operations Officer, Frederick Ross, Executive Director, Operational Planning and Project Management, and Dr. Adam Malloy, Director Planning, Growth, and Capacity.
I have no comments, Madam Vice Chair, or my apologies. The internet and phone connection on the road today has been very, very bad, so my apologies.
Hope you're traveling safely.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year. We're grateful to present the proposed 10-year capital plan for the School District of Lee County. This marks our team's 3rd presentation, building on discussions from August 16th and December 5th of last year. Tonight's action meeting features an agenda item, the school board's vote on the 10-year capital plan and its associated budget. Please note that that adjustments will need to be made considering factors like demographic changes and financial considerations. The capital plan is slated for annual updates to maintain relevance and accuracy. Your understanding and support are appreciated. The upcoming slides will closely resemble the capital plan proposed on December 5th with minor highlighted adjustments. These changes reflect the Capital Committee's commitment to aligning with parameters discussed or suggested in previous meetings. The agenda highlights key topics for today's briefing. Notably, we've made minor changes such as reducing proposed middle school prototypes and advancing one capital project by a year. The presentation will revisit how the capital plan impacts capacity and discuss the associated financial implications. The capital plan adjustments were thoughtfully made considering key factors that shaped the revised strategy. Board feedback from the August 16th and December 5th presentations were instrumental in informing these changes. Budgetary constraints, particularly the potential revenue loss from the half-penny sales tax, played a significant role, leading to a reduction in new school projects and essential modernization and maintenance cycles, and the recommendations that we're making today. The Capital Committee maintains its recommendation to enhance the capacity of our secondary, middle, and high schools. We've revised our initial middle school prototype proposal, reducing them from 1,800 to 1,500 seats. This adjustment impacts only one middle school in the current capital plan, but contributes an additional 300 seats to our projected seat deficit. To reiterate, upcoming middle school capacities will rise from 1,200 to 1,500 and high schools from 2,000 to 2,800. This alignment with capacity approaches similarly sized school districts throughout the state. Slide 4 highlights the comparison between the two capital plans, focusing on the contrasting figures for seat numbers and associated costs. The August 16th presentation stressed the need for additional seats and facilities to manage and sustain student growth. In contrast, today's proposal takes a more pragmatic approach, considering financial constraints within the specified timeline. It outlines practical options to operate within designated financial avenues. Notably, the highlighted seat difference is 300 seats fewer than the comparison slide presented on December 5th, reflecting the reduction of proposed middle school RR seat numbers from 1,800 to 1,500. Slide 5 revisits the December 5th proposed 10-year capital plan, emphasizing two changes. Firstly, the Bayshore Elementary addition has been rescheduled from 2028 to 2027, impacting current fourth graders at Bayshore. The second change is the reduction of middle school RR seats from 1,800 to 1,500. These are the only deviations from the proposed capital plan presented to the board on December 5th. It's noteworthy that the August 16th presentation included projects omitted in today's final capital plan, such as East Technical, West Middle School, South High School expansion, West High School RRR, East Middle School TT, East High School SSS, and East Elementary Q. The exclusion of these schools and the associated 10,000 seats can be found in the attachment titled 12-5 10-year capital plan presentation. The loan addition to the capital plan involves a strategic building expansion at Bayshore Elementary, facilitating its phased 3-year transition to a K-8 facility. Notably, the Bayshore project is now slated for completion in 2027 instead of 2028. Some new school projects, like Middle School OO, are progressing through phase design, while others, such as Elementary L and M, are currently working their way and finalizing in the RFQ process. This distinction is crucial, considering both time constraints and projected seat requirements. The proposed list includes two projects in the South Zone, 4 new school construction projects in the West Zone, and 8 schools in the East Zone. Slide 7 concludes the 2024 new construction expansion proposals featuring East Middle School RR with a prototype capacity change from 1,800 to 1,500. Notably, the proposed capital plan removes schools towards the end of the 10-year timeline. This is driven by considerations of available funding for new projects and heightened accuracy of student projections in the initial 5 years. The projected cost for new construction and expansions is $1.4 billion, providing over 17,000 additional seats to the school district of Lee County over the 10-year span. This repetition serves to underscore the comparison between the two capital plans, emphasizing the contrasting figures for the number of seats and associated costs in each. The August 16th presentation primarily emphasized the imperative for additional seats and facilities to accommodate and sustain student growth. In contrast, today's presentation reflects a more pragmatic consideration of the financial constraints within the specified time frame. Slide 9 presents a concise side-by-side comparison of two charts. one from the August 16th presentation and the other detailing today's proposed capital plan. The left chart, labeled August 16th New Capacity, envisions 17 new school facilities adding 28,380 student seats. In this hypothetical scenario, with 114,563 students projected in 2033, the district would have a surplus of 5,642 seats. In contrast, the final capital plan proposal, featuring 12 new school district facilities, provides 17,480 student seats. This is 4,758 seats short of the projected 114,563 K-12 students in 2033. This raises a critical question. What does this mean if both projections hold true and the specific plan is implemented? It suggests some potential capacity stress marked by the presence of portable and additional buildings to maximize current school properties across each level and zone. We do anticipate updated student forecast numbers in the next few weeks, and we'll use the data to update the capital plan annually as we move forward. This last slide reiterates the Capital Committee's recommendation shared with the board on December 5th. Your approval of the capital plan at tonight's meeting will formalize the projects discussed in earlier meetings and establish the district's financial responsibility for the associated costs. This concludes today's briefing presentation on the capital plan, which will be subject to an action vote at tonight's meeting.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, we have gone through the proposed changes that we talked about in one-on-ones. We have provided you what we believe is our best viewpoint for the next 10 years. Dr. Malloy, if you go back to slide where the entire plan is on one slide. I think it's slide 7. We moved Bayshore up to 2027. You'll see that beginning at the top, Bonita Springs Elementary, which we've had numerous discussions about, the historic buildings there and the current condition of the brick. Hector Caffaretta becomes the second highest priority. South in Cypress Lake Middle is already underway. We are waiting for the portables to be freed up at Franklin Park, move those portables to Cypress so Cypress can begin its process, and then 2 very necessary school buildings in the east and 1 in the west in terms of driving the ability to have seats specifically for those particular communities. Bayshore was originally slated for 2028, and before we get in, I think this will be a topic of discussion today. Before we get into that, I think it's important for the community to know what that means and make sure that we start on that level playing field. What that means, the 2027 is a completion date, not a start date for Bayshore K-8. It would be by the fall of 2027, they would be then allowed to occupy Bayshore with 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. So moving that backwards, that means, and that's why Dr. Malloy mentioned 4th graders, that means next year, the way this plan is currently laid out, the Bayshore 5th graders would have to make a choice under the new middle school proximity plan. In 25-26, that's when the 6th graders would start. 7th grade, they would matriculate up to 7th grade. A new group of 6th graders would start in 26-27. And then in 27-28, there would be the facility necessary as a K-8 to house the Bayshore community. That puts us provides us enough time in order to properly plan, permit, because Bayshore is not a prototype. Bayshore will be in a sense, a custom build on the property that we have. So I just think it's important. Recently, and the reason why I say this, the last 2 emails I just received, there seems to be some confusion among some of the public that we wouldn't even allow 6th graders to start until 2027. And that has never been this board's intention. The board's intention was a roll-up to 28 originally. Based upon your feedback, I'm working with the team, we moved it up to 2027. But I think there's going to be some additional concern through our emails and some conversation today. And stand at the ready to listen and adjust the plan accordingly.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Before I head to the other board members here, I would like to start with asking if Ms. Patrica has anything she'd like to ask or add. right, I'll make sure to follow up after we all speak. Does any, board members, do you have any comments or questions regarding this topic? Yes, Mr. Persons.
Yeah, Bayshore is in my district. The problem I see is over the years, the kids have had to go to like Harns Marsh across the river. And that was quite a trip. And now we're asking at least half of the upcoming fifth graders moving on to sixth to travel even further than they were to go to Harns Marsh. So I would like to see this go ahead and move up a year. The first 2 years is at minimal cost because they have open rooms. So we'd have to get, I understand the planning, you have to get on it right away. I've got a lot of faith y'all can do that. But even if we had to keep the financial burden where it is, and maybe, I know this is a cost, but maybe just use portables for if we moved it up a year for 1 year and still have the extension and the gymnasium done by 27, it doesn't affect the financial that much. I personally would like to see the new classrooms done in time for 26, if that's possible, and then keep the gymnasium done in 27. I think, because I just think it would be fair to all the kids, because if those sixth graders have to go further away, they're not only going further away for sixth grade, they're going further away for seventh grade, further away for eighth grade, because they'll be in high school by the time eighth grade is allowed to be in there. So I think that's a tremendous burden on those families right now, and we're trying to cut back on busing. So to me, there's an expense on busing that maybe we could save if we did that, and we're able to do it. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Ms. Jordan.
I have to agree with Mr. Persons over here. I was looking at, and I know that we're looking at this 50,000, the 50,000, but I look at that as something that can, as he said, you know, we could take care of that by 2027. I don't know where the 300 came from, because from my understanding, it's 405. Is what I have heard, so I don't know where the 300 number comes from on there. And then when I look at the fish, I've been doing a lot of reading. It's telling us that we have 46.5 available surplus at Bayshore. The dining room already is slated for 850 students, so that was done some years ago. So we already have the capacity for students to be there in the dining room, which is part of the regulations of what you need for a K-8 school. You have to have the capacity for the dining room, which we already have that there. So that would not be something that we would need. And I wasn't sure if we were to talk about it here or speak about it this evening. So whatever is a preference to you all. I mean, I have comments. So what would you rather speak about it here? Okay. And so the gymnasium, I understand, is one of the things that we need to have, which I know that the church has offered that because they do a lot with the school right now. And I look at it, there's 100 students that we're speaking about that would be rising sixth graders. So we have 100 students that would be moving. So if you could keep 100 students in a facility that, again, it says 300, but I believe it's more than 300. I think it's like 405 is what the actual number is. So again, I don't know where that number came from, and maybe I misunderstood what I was told.
Can I clarify that before we can continue to repeat it? The goal for Bayshore was to create enough space for 150 students to matriculate each year, total number being 450 total. There is enough space in room currently at Bayshore to accept that first class and squeeze in a second year while we're still constructing potentially that other class of 150. But ultimately, we would need to build 300 additional seats in order to ensure that population. So that's where the 300 is coming from. 150 a year potentially being transferred, staying the year we decide to matriculate them from 5th to 6th. That 150 moves up to 7th grade, another 150 and moves in behind it. And ultimately, you have 3 grade levels of 150 apiece for 450. But we would need 300 additional seats in order to make that accommodation, because there's different square footages for older students. There's lots of different things that have to transpire.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And also, when I was looking at all the different, the educational facility sites and everything that I have been reading, it's really, really hard to find the exact needs for a K-8 in reading all of that, because then you get to another chapter and then another chapter, and it takes you days to read this, and you still don't have an answer. So with that, it was saying that, you know, your spaces that are required for that would be like our science labs, music and art spaces, but then everything is all depending upon the programs that are offered at the schools. So again, it depends on what is offered in that first year or the second year or that third year of completion. And as we move forward that way, and we can make sure that we are building those programs to meet the needs. But if you look at the, when I talk to all the parents and you're reading everything and now how they are, you know, it is a rural setting for these families. And I even told the one parent, I was going to steal his words, you know, that they live in a rural setting and that they have similar mindset that these kids, that they believe in hard work, success of life. They play differently than other kids. They ride four-wheelers, they're swamp buggies, they are airboats. And they, I'm not going to say what the one was, but they hunt animals, they go fishing. But I think that we, instead of us shipping them 20 miles away from their home, which is further than what they were before, how do we help them? Because we understand that North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts is not going to be able to take in 100 students, which would be their closest school to them.
I can have Dr. Malloy explain a little bit about the proximity. I know that Harnsmarsh, let's put some numbers on the table while Dr. Malloy can also get an understanding of what potentially I'm looking for. Right now, Harnsmarsh Middle is 16 miles from Bayshore Elementary. A lot of the students also go to Oak Hammock, which is 7 miles across. So the proximities to the current choices within the zone for Bayshore, I don't want to put Mr. Malloy on the spot. I don't know that we were necessarily prepared directly for this question, so I'm giving him some time. I think you're raising some excellent points. I don't think anybody argues, I'm buying Dr. Malloy a little bit of time, I don't think anybody argues that this should and could happen. I think it's also important for the Bayshore community and others to understand that this was one of the first topics that was ever introduced to me when I came on board as a superintendent. We were actually investigating the 10-year plan and Bayshore when Hurricane Ian struck, right? So it would have been really great if a year ago Bayshore had, by board approval, had climbed onto the plan and we already had a planning year in place. I go back to, and I'm by no means proposing this, but because Bayshore K-8 is not a prototype, it is a custom build. It's an add-on to the existing facility, et cetera. It's going to take longer to design and build than it would be if we just built a K-8 prototype. The reason why I want to be careful about that is we don't have any way to move Bayshore somewhere while we build the K-8 prototype, because we're already utilizing the portables that we own for Franklin Park, and those portables are then being utilized for Cypress. And Cypress was already in the plan and is already well down the path to being constructed. So hopefully that has given Mr. Malloy enough time to look at the distances and miles of the other choices within the proximity zone, because I think this is really valuable for this to all get out into the community so that people can understand exactly what and why, depending on the decision we make.
Correct. So Bayshore, those rising sixth graders going into middle school, they were in E1. There was no middle school in E1. They crossed the river and came in primarily to Oak Hammock. Oak Hammock is 7 miles away. from Bayshore Elementary, the exact address. It could be further depending on where they live in E1, or closer depending on where they live in E1. With proximity and, the Bayshore conversation, really got an opportunity and a window with proximity because we were going to align the community with North Fort Myers and Cape Coral because they are in North Fort Myers, right? That was part of the ethos and themes of proximity. So within their proximity zone now, where Oak Hammock, where they primarily go to middle school, their closest middle school would now be North Fort Myers Academy at 6.4 miles. Right? We've already discussed at the December 5th presentation that there are not enough spots given the arts in the rising sixth graders for the current Bayshore Elementary students to go to North Fort Myers Academy, meaning that they would have to travel to Colusa or Diplomat. So Diplomat is 8.1 miles and Colusa Middle is 9.8 miles, right? That is within their proximity zone. One of the interesting things, which I know we know, is the spatial isolation of Bayshore, which is what makes this somewhat of an interesting topic. We are eliminating and connecting the community with North Fort Myers, but without the roll-up down the line, we are potentially sending them further than we were to Oak Hammock across the river.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And this conversation about, and I would not want any of these other ones to be moved, I'm not even remotely stating that, but is how do we get those 100 to stay there? And this conversation with Bayshore has been going on for at least 4 years about being a K-8. I feel like this is another Franklin Park situation. That was like a 5-year conversation, and now Bayshore has been just as long as that by doing what is right. So I don't know, I'll give somebody else an opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jordan. If you have anything, we'll definitely come back. Anybody else have anything? Yes, Ms. Morgan.
Well, staying on Bayshore, but I have some others. So it's really not that much longer. I'm struggling with this. The distance is not significantly greater. The real question is isolating the student population for a period of 3 years. And I guess another question I have is, so you don't have a science program because you don't have a lab. So how do you do science? What other programs are middle school programs that would not be offered to these kids?
Well, one of the things you'll have to do in a K-8 situation, and this is what people tend to focus on, the academic space. And yes, there is space academically and space potentially for the electives that are normally offered to a middle school student. And when you start seeing things like band, art, chorus, potentially some other form of the arts, then people sometimes retort and say, well, we already have those teachers. Yes, you do, but they are your K-5 teachers, and they already have a full boat of K-5 children that they educate. So you have to add additional music, additional math, right? Additional music, additional art. And you must also have, eventually, the programmatic space to properly teach those classes, right? You could get away for a little while with a 6th grade band in an environment that is not particularly conducive to a band. But when you start to build a middle school band, then there would be requirement to have, I believe, the proper equity of having the right style of room for a band, an art class, and the other electives that our middle school students in K-8s normally enjoy.
So I guess what I would like to see, because we're focusing on the distance that kids travel, and to me that's not a significant factor. The significant factor is protecting the community. But I don't think the community has seen, nor have I seen, what happens at that school 1 year from now when 100 kids stay in the school and we're providing middle school programming for those students. What happens in 2 years when those students advance to 7th and a new group comes up to 6th? What are we looking at in terms of program for those kids? Because I just don't see it. Now, the other question I have is a church. I know the issue came up in Fort Myers Beach, security. So there are issues with some of these things. So I think we need to see with much greater clarity what a year from now, moving 100 kids up and keeping them in the school looks like in that school, and then doing it for another 150 kids the following year. Maybe it doesn't make a difference, but for me to weigh in on this, that's the kind of information I would like to see. Now, moving on, I have questions about two other things, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. One is, where did I write it down? Oh, Hector Caffaretta. So we have Hector Caffaretta on this list as next up for $98.7 million. Now, I assume that number comes from when we were doing the P3. Is no longer doing a P3 going to change the timing, and will it change the cost of the school?
The expectation, again, these are, when you look at that particular column, these are always estimated costs.
I understand.
Remember, for the public consumption, we take all of these processes through, all of these buildings through a process that comes out with a guaranteed maximum price. The expectation for Hector Caffaretta is that will still continue to be a P3 proposal that we put out onto the street.
Even though we don't have a policy or a process?
We do have a process to follow a P3 proposal. We do have a manner and means to follow other districts' processes to follow a P3 proposal.
But it didn't work.
We made an error in the course of that process, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I would like to see...
We know where our error was made.
Okay, I would like to see, if we're going to proceed without a policy on P3, I would like to see the process documents, just putting it out there. Then other than Hector Caffaretta, the last question is about the Tech College. I understand why it's been removed. It doesn't fit in, it's from a 10-year capital plan, no, from a strategic plan point, this is not important enough within the strategic plan to put it in the 10-year capital plan. That's what I'm reading. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be done another way. I think at some point it would be of value to the board to see what potential alternatives there will be for a technical college in the East Zone if we no longer have it on our 10-year capital plan.
Well, one part to that, Mrs. Morgan, is the current legislative platform that you have up in Tallahassee, and that is to create an East Side Annex attached to Fort Myers Technical College.
Right.
That would be the beginning of a process by which we could see and begin to test the interest. It is not just a matter of strategic plan. It really has to do with the cost of a technical center.
I understand.
And the idea that we had reserved, I believe, I'll defer to Ms. Desamore, but I believe it was in the neighborhood of $40 million for our portion of it. And then prior to my arrival, there was going to be some form of public fundraising to raise the additional dollars, and that never got codified moving forward. I don't know, we've talked sometimes about the different types of industries, some just north of us, which you know, we should be exploring those industries in particular related to how we develop our students who join our technical colleges and universities. Maybe some of that corporate sponsorship is out there for the East, but that's never been really part of it. So I think that we can move back to look at the technical, we should do it almost as a separate item.
And I understand that. And so what I'm saying is at some point it would be helpful, probably after session is closed and we know whether or not we've got some seed money, so to speak, you know, what the plan is, rather than just saying, you know, we're looking at the legislature, because I think that's another problem. But anyway, those are my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. I have a whole bunch of different things. Vice Chair Langford Fleming, so if I go over, please just cut me off. So, first off, in regards to Bayshore, I'm not in opposition to it, or not in opposition to moving up, but I do have two questions with that. Talked about possibly if we have to go to portables, and if that happens, for example, if we do set it for 2026 and, you know, we can't finish it in 2026, what happens next? And what would generally be a financial burden at that point, if we know that answer right now?
I can help with that, sir, if you'd allow. There's a couple of ways to approach Bayshore if you were to move it up to 2026. And again, for the edification of the community, that would mean that in 24-25, next school year, there would be fifth graders allowed to matriculate up, and we'd have 100 to 150 students at Bayshore operating in the sixth grade. Strategic budget would have to be aligned for the principal and for the school site based upon that enrollment. The additional staff that would be necessary, he'd have to be allocated for that, and we would go ahead and begin that process. That would take them all the way to the 26th, fall of 26, when the building could open. Programmatically, you could delay some things, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. You could delay, for instance, the gymnasium, right? But I would, in 2026, in 2026, there'll be somebody else sitting in the seat. But you could delay the gymnasium but I would argue or make an emphatic plea to the board that you not lose track of building that gym. Having lived in a former life where a K-8 was built without a gymnasium, people's history is short. In about 7 years of operation of that K-8, a new set of parents, a new group of community members had risen into leadership within that community, and they wanted to know why they were the only K-8 in this particular organization that didn't have a gym. And lo and behold, we had to start figuring out how we were going to build a gym. So I think the team needs significant planning time to do a couple of things. One is we have to look at, to Ms. Morgan's point, what does it look like and how do we plan for it so that sixth graders make the matriculation and we're prepared for them. Could we do that in this spring? Yes, we could. Ben Osman is a great principal. He's got a great faculty. He's got a great community. We could certainly work with strategic budget, and we could budget him appropriately. But long term, we have to be sure, and this is the part that concerns me. I've described it this way to the cabinet, and I'm glad the sign still, the screen is still up there. That yellow line where Bayshore is, everything above that, consider that a ceiling. We can move the date. We could move the date from 27 to 26. My concern is, with all the construction necessary in the ceiling, do we have enough bandwidth to make this work? Are we at 20? If we move that to 26, we got 29 months, by my calculation, give or take, to make that happen. If it doesn't happen, to Mr. Fisher's question, the cost of portable setup is about $10,000 without grading fields and doing all the electrical work. It's about $10,000 per portable to set one up. The releasing cost of a portable, which we believe we could need as many as 7, is $1,630 a month, times 7, $11,410 a month, for a total cost per annual of $136,920. That's today's estimate. You're talking about 2026. We assume there would be some inflation involved there. $136,920 is a lot of money, but in a $2.2 billion budget, you know, and looking at a capital plan of $1.48 billion, you know, that's a board member's decision. My concern is the ceiling of the 25 and 26 projects that are already there. And do we have enough bandwidth? Because Mr. Fisher raises a great question. We could wind up in a situation where we are not done in 2026. And we would have to be contingency planning now in order to be sure that we're there. It's possible. 2027 buys us the planning time we need, and that's why the recommendation was made for it to be there. But again, we're open. Can we build it by 26? I believe with prioritization, we could, but I worry about all the other projects as well, because we start to tap into all of the construction companies that we currently use, and they could be in multiple projects at the same time. So.
Thank you, Dr. Bruno. That helped.
Sorry for the long response.
No, that helped. I appreciate it. And that's, as I said, I'm not opposed to it, but like you said, contingency plans are important to me. And just even looking at this, I would, Bonita and Hector are so important right now to those two. I mean, I just want to make sure those ones obviously go through. Second thing is Mrs. Morgan brought up about neighborhood, which is, like you said, I mean, that's the main reason. But I would disagree. Distance is an issue here because there's a difference between 8 or 9 miles going to Calusa or Diplomat with Pine Island Road and Del Prado these days than some of the other roads. So, and with our spirit of what we're going with middle school proximity, that's a concern for me going that. So, because distances are not always even. I don't know if that makes any sense, but are equal, I should say. And that brings up a question. I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, Dr. Malloy. Sorry to put you on the spot. That area in Bayshore for growth, are we looking at a significant population growth in that area, or is it more steady? If you know that, I'm not expecting the answer right now, but.
We can certainly get you the specific student generation update in a few weeks, but we did ask for that specific region to be run. There are a large number of units being built in the area that will generate students. We believe that this capacity will help.
Okay, because that's then the other part. I want to make sure we're prepared if there's even more growth over there. So, which brings me then to points I had. We talk about the biggest thing that's concerning me is the 4,758 negative seats based on this compared to the other ones. So, and I think it's us as a board and administration. Obviously, I know we have this capital plan, set in this period of time, and I know that we need to obviously have this set per the state, right? On this, that have our capital plan, but I also want to make sure we keep up to date, because obviously it can be amended at any point. Just I want to make sure we're continuing to run those calculations and look at ways, to make sure that we're able to cover that, because the 4,700 seats in the future, that worries me. So I hope as a board and administration, we really keep an eye on that every so often, 5-6 months at least or something like that, because that's something that's concerning to me with that as we go forward. The other thing I have is refurbish or modernization plans. So I believe there's about $30 million that was cut for that between the December 5th one and the original plan for that. Are we still, even with those cuts, are we in good shape? Because I know we have many, many school buildings throughout the district that obviously need a lot of capital improvements to it.
Mr. Ross?
Yes, so in order to reduce that modernization budget, the maintenance department took a look at the different trade areas and identified areas where they could possibly extend the rotation. So where, they may renovate or exchange or turn over an item every 10 years, trying to extend that to 12 years, looking at the warranty periods, looking at the estimates or actuals on how long the product has actually been lasting, and trying to extend those rotations. So I think your question was, are we still in a good place? We still need to obviously upkeep our equipment and do our modernization projects. Extending some of the time periods did give some of the maintenance heartburn, but yes, we do feel like these systems will continue to work. We will have to provide a little more maintenance. There may be some more service requests that come, but we do feel like they won't fail on us.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I appreciate that. Yeah, because that's been a concern, and not to put a pun on it, but air conditionings have been obviously a hot topic. So, dad joke, sorry. I appreciate that. Last thing, real quick, Ms. Langford Fleming, if it's all right. I did ask to pull this item tonight at the board action meeting. The only reason was just the scope of this. I just felt maybe it was more than a consent agenda item. Even if we didn't have that much more discussion on it, maybe perhaps, and I mentioned this to Dr. Breer, maybe he could give just a little bit of overview of this again. Again, obviously, we've gone through workshops and briefings, but again, the public, as I said, especially tonight, I want to make sure they have all the facts and data presented before them. That was the only reason I'm asking for a poll tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica, are you still on the line?
I am, thank you. So I do have a couple of questions. And the first, I think, has been answered, which was to Dr. Bernier. Why are you not recommending that Bayshore students attend Bayshore as middle school students next year? I think that question has been answered, but it raises a new question for me. I'm hearing, and again, I'm in a bad spot, so I haven't heard everything that's been said, but I'm hearing new questions being raised with regard to Bayshore and whether we can actually accommodate students next year, what that would mean, what does the plan look like? And if we do move it up for a 2026 completion and we're not able to complete it, how much would portables be? Where would they go? I'm hearing a lot of unanswered questions, and that is not a criticism to staff. Those are questions that were raised at the table today. So I'm wondering whether we should even be voting on this tonight if we have information that we need in order to make a decision. Am I making sense?
That something needs to be voted on tonight. We are in danger of our projects for 25 and 26 falling behind the proposed schedules to the point where those dates potentially can become troublesome. So if we were to leave Bayshore and maybe come back and revisit it, we could, but I would encourage the board to give our construction and maintenance and facilities team some direction this evening so that the projects at the top of the list can continue and be sure that those are being done. Maybe the similar way we dealt with the RSM audit, right? We moved the physical security item forward, and then we're coming back to address the rest of it tonight. But I believe, and I've looked and I've seen members of my maintenance team and my COO nodding his head, the direction to move forward on those projects would be important. And Ms. Patrica, to your point, and I think we maybe want to have some more discussion, but I'm not trying to lengthen the work session, the briefing, but the questions arise over the 26. Thinking out and planning how to make the transition, properly inform parents, making sure everybody needs to do, having budget and finance do its work to be prepared to help support a K-8, not only in its first year transition, but into the future, planning for those music and PE and other places, right? There was some logic to why the 27 date landed there. Could this have been different without Hurricane Ian? It could have been, but we can't fix that. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Patrica.
Ms. Patrica.
A response, and I hear you. Yeah, thank you for the response. I hear you, and I appreciate that. I am not comfortable with going outside the recommendations made by staff this evening without answers to those questions. So you know that I know that a motion will be made by Mr. Persons this evening, and I'm wondering whether we can't just pull Bayshore out of the discussion until we have more. Pull Bayshore out of the 10-year capital plan vote tonight until we have more information, and then put that out after the
You hear us?
Hello?
That came across loud and clear.
Just not the
Previous
few
minute.
minutes before.
I can take you to where I believe we began to lose connection with you. You talked about Bayshore potentially being pulled off the 10-year plan until such time as we could address, and then pretty much everything that followed that, we didn't get much of the communication.
Okay.
Ms. Patrica, I'm going to go ahead and move to Ms. Morgan.
So following up on Ms. Patrica, is it possible to pass this plan and then amend it?
Yes.
To me, that seems to, yeah. So, I mean, we could amend it 2 weeks from tonight if need be. Okay, so, I mean,
The goal of a capital plan is always, it is a living document. To Mr. Fisher's earlier point, again, more education to the public, the red lines that you see consistently through the project is a target point that we've identified in every graph as to where the half-penny sales tax potentially no longer exists. If not renewed, that's why we didn't extend beyond that period of time. if renewed, then this plan gets larger and the debt gets smaller to the school district. So yes, the critical component for me is this plan can only be adjusted by the board, which is why it's important that the board vote on it and put it into place. Staff can make recommendations then about what they believe needs to be amended moving forward, and board members can make it. And it's clear that I'm getting some direction that we want to look at Bay Shore to see if there's any possibility, and I can ask my COO and his construction team to prioritize this and potentially bring that revision back to you as early as the meeting in January. It would mean they would stop doing something that they're doing, but they should be able with the capital committee to backwards plan a 26 opening and how much time, and if Scott needs 8 months to 12 months to actually build, right, then we add to that. Then there's the amount of permitting and planning that needs to be done in order to be able to build. We could backwards plan and see whether we can get started in a time frame that would allow it to be open and complete.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Persons, go ahead.
Well, it just seems to me that leaving it where it is one thing we're talking about. The other thing, believe it or not, totally, it's sort of unrelated, because that's the building of the new building and the gymnasium. The other thing is moving the kids up next year. The difference is what happens in 2026 when you don't have enough, the classrooms aren't there. And Superintendent, you said it'd be about how much? $150,000?
$140,000.
Yeah. So let's just say $200,000. Is a very doable sum of just planning in advance to have some portables there for 1 year. To me, I think we should, at the worst case scenario, leave it where it is, but still plan on moving the kids up and plan on having portables there for 1 year. And if you're able to get it done sooner, we would love you. Simple as that. But I understand with all the planning and everything, that would be difficult. So it's sort of a compromise there. I mean, to move the construction part of the gym and the building up a year, I think is not a doable thing, and I understand that. But I think putting some portables in there for 1 year, I think would be a doable thing. Do y'all have any comments on that?
It depends on when, I just want to clarify when you would want the portables. I think what I hear you saying is those portables, the fifth grade could come to sixth, the sixth could go to seventh, and it would be, if it wasn't ready, then those portables could go in order to help support those original sixth graders who are now eighth graders. So we wouldn't need portables now.
No.
We would need portables in 26, 27 if the facility for the education of those students is not complete, knowing that the gym and other ancillary facilities might lag behind.
And I think with some of the money you would save on busing would go toward that if it was, let's say, $150,000, and busing those kids for 3 years further has got to be an expense that you wouldn't have if they stayed at Bay Shore.
Go ahead, Dr. Malloy.
Thank you. I just had a few thoughts based on the comments. The script did not properly thank Larry Stevens, Dr. Desamore, and Frederick Ross. They've put it in a cadence in which not only is the board approving, but the board is being updated based on our student projections. So we will have those in 2 weeks. So they have put us in the leadership has really put us in a great position in terms of how we update the capital plan, and if amendments are proposed. I know that Dr. Bernier touched on that. Secondly, I did want to bring up just a window of time that I think is important for the conversation, and that is middle school open enrollment, which is January 26th to February 29th. It would be key, if this were to be activated for next year, it would be key to make sure that we had that in the roll-up for those current fifth graders, so as to secure seats and so as not to disrupt capacity across the zone.
I'm going to interject here on this. It's funny that you say that, Dr. Malloy, because I have that written down. What are we going to do on student enrollment, or open enrollment, which happens in a couple of weeks? have we talked to these families? I know that our emails have been inundated with support from the community, and I'm grateful for that. Because like I said, we never know we never know what to fix if we don't know it's broken in the first place. So, but have we really surveyed or polled the families that are fifth graders and asked, do you want to stay? Because yes, while we've gotten about 30 or 40, there's 150 fifth graders, 150 fifth graders. Do you want to stay, or are you planning on going to another middle school? And I just wonder if we've asked these questions of those families, and have we surveyed them? And the other thing I had written down was, let's say we keep this, let's say this all works out and the fifth graders are able to stay, which would be wonderful for them. What about those children that, and what happens if we don't, but then we end up going and getting this done by 26 because I think you guys are magical and could do it. Are we going to give those seventh graders the first rights to come back to the school that they once loved so much? I mean, these are just some thoughts that have like popped in my head as I've listened to and read all these emails, and I'm so glad you brought that up about the type of community. We live in a beautifully diverse community. So yes, Bayshore, kids that go to Bayshore have a very different experience than the kids that live in Cape Coral and Sanibel and Bonita. So I think it's important that we keep the uniqueness of each area. It's what makes our county so amazing. But those are just some questions I think we need to ask with the open enrollment coming up so soon. Are you willing to stay? Are you planning on staying? Or were you looking forward to experiencing middle school elsewhere? Those are just some of my, go ahead.
Yeah, to that point, there is a comparison in what we have now proposed with Pine Island Elementary automatically rolling up to Trafalgar. So that concept would also be applied to Bayshore, where Bayshore would not be open until the building was complete. It would just simply roll up grade-wise. They would have the option of going into their choice zone if they so wish. So that would be I guess the comparable case study that I could use to make it relevant.
Okay, thank you.
And to your questions, it's one of the reasons why the plan was brought forth. And I understand there's a desire to move it. I'm not arguing with you. There's a reason why the plan has a 2027 date. And that's because that uses the remainder of this year and next year as planning time to do some of that work. It gave us the avenue before middle school proximity went into effect. The good news is, and I know my chief operations officer will text me or come to my office as soon as this meeting is over, but if you are going to move it, if you want us to shoot for 2026, I think it's important that the date changes versus us planning for 2027 and hoping, because miracles, I know miracles happen all the time, but they're not going to happen in a construction and facilities project. So let's not plan on a miracle occurring. Let's put our thinking caps on, and that's why 2027 was chosen as an opening year, to afford the opportunity to plan for this transition with our kids and their families. I know that Bayshore families want this transition now. They wanted it a year ago now. Ms. Jordan would tell me that they wanted it 5 years ago now. I can't control all the past, but what I can say is there's a danger potentially in creating an arbitrary deadline where the team feels that they may not have the time to make it, nor can we do the proper amount of understanding of how it rolls up. The good news is, if we were to work really, really hard over the course of the next few days and early next week, we could post an item for the 23rd, which would definitively tell you whether we can make it or not make it. If we can't make it, how we would deal potentially with portables and cost it out further. We could do that, and still, if we chose to allow Bayshore to roll up or to matriculate up, we still have the window, because Dr. Malloy has shared with us that would happen on the 26th. The 26th is the start of the window, Dr. Malloy, or the end?
Correct. That is the start of middle school open enrollment.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Jordan?
Well, I really appreciate all this conversation, but I do want to state, I definitely would not want to see it come off. And I think that at the workshop that we had, that the parents came over to Harns Marsh, and that was their biggest fear is, God forbid, we take this off, and then you get new people on here, what happens? That was their biggest concern about that, about who's sitting here, who's not sitting here. We make recommendation, it's a living, breathing document that can be changed anytime. That was a concern. Because, hey, tomorrow we may not want, change our mind, and then what's going to happen? So whatever we do, we have to say that we're going to do it and stand with it and move. And again, also the DOE, just saying, another thing, that K-8s are not required to have gymnasiums and art-related classes. Not that we don't want them, I'm just saying it is not a requirement. So this is not something that we can move years down to get this, but as it states, it is not. Thank you.
And I will reiterate to the board, you're 100% correct, Mrs. Jordan. They're not required. But in equitable status, a community eventually is going to turn around and look and say, why don't we have an art, a band, and a gym, right? That's what they're going to do. So we're wise to build it appropriately and try to find a way if we can. I would also agree and advise the board, I do also believe that it should not come off the plan. It's got a placeholder, it's where it needs to be. Potentially, we could, in a sense, add an asterisk that we're going to come back. What I need is some direction in terms of, or maybe I can wait for tonight, because tonight will tell me. Because I believe Mr. Person's motion I will ask that date to be moved. Is that not correct, sir?
It is correct. I want to see them roll up starting next year. But again, I don't necessarily see you need to change anything here if we agree that we could put portables in there for that 1 year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very doable compromise. While I haven't done a formal survey, I'm at Bay Shore every day, dropping off my grandchild. And believe me, they all want to go, stay there. And I go to the Publix, I go to the bank, and they all come up to me. Unfortunately, they recognize me. But my daughter went there, and it's just a great school. I'm not so worried about the planning of the programs. I mean, come on, we have a lot of middle schools, and we have all the direction. I mean, it's not like the principal has to figure out, how am I going to do this? I mean, we have a full district here to guide them. So I think that's very doable. Am I worried about staffing? At every school.
Yes.
But this is one of the better schools, and academically, and people love the principal and love the staff. So I think it will not have a problem getting staff. So, my motion, again, I will still make it tonight. It will be to move move it up. And I'm going to change it a little bit to say, if not able to be finished, to keep the completion time the same, so the burden is not on the construction, and to come up with a plan on portables type thing.
So what I think I'm hearing is that the 2027, sorry, Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
The 2027 date could stay, but in the course between now and tonight, we can do some more in-depth work. That the real desire is for that 5th grade to begin their matriculation process this year. Mm-hmm. And that in order to do that, the board would have to understand, if not done by 2026, then we would have to supply portables for the period of time until the building could be fully completed in 2027.
Right, and that could be a real possibility. Mm-hmm. Probably more than not. I'm hoping for the best, but I think we need to pass it with that in mind. So I'll change my motion slightly to add portables in there and adjust it from there when I make it tonight.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I will get with staff immediately following the briefing.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to ask if you have clarification for tonight's moving forward. Okay.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Hey, I think this is to Attorney Dupree Bruno. When I hear about equity or the lack thereof with regard to facilities and programming surrounding science and gymnasiums and fields and music rooms and all of that, I also worry about liability when we knowingly go into a project knowing that it will be inequitable. Through the chair, if I may, Attorney Dupree Bruno, do you have liability concerns with regard to equity? Please and thank you.
So this is a very good question, Ms. Patrica. It's something that I will have to evaluate a little bit further with the team to get some more information so I can make that determination.
Madam Chair?
Thank you.
If I may respond to Ms. Patrica as well, I think if the intent was to open and build a Bay Shore that was inequitable, we would have those issues. Our goal in our process is not to do that. Our goal in our process is to ensure that we have an equitable K-8 facility to house K-8 students in an equitable situation in comparison to our other middle school and other K-8s. It will have to be a phased-in over time project.
And maybe I phrased my question incorrectly. The board would know going into it that those first several classes would not have the same experience as others. We do have the option of waiting until we have an equitable or equal facility. And that's where my concern is. Do those first few classes who walk in and they don't have the science labs and they don't have the gymnasium, do those first few classes have a case, so to speak? Is there liability? Are we assuming liability in making that decision for those first few classes? That was my first question. My second question was, I really liked Mrs. Langford Fleming's question about all students being, or all families being surveyed. Because I hear you, Mr. Persons, it can feel like an entire school it wants the same thing when you're in the grocery store, or you're at church, or you're somewhere and you're getting that feedback. You're doing drop off, you're in the school all the time, you're getting that feedback, but not everybody in the school is speaking to you, and certainly not everybody in the school is speaking to me. So having that feedback turned into data with sort of an official survey, hoping for significant participation in that survey, would be super helpful to me. Those are my comments. Thank you so much for your patience in this bad technology.
If I may, thank you for your clarification. I think that helps both Attorney Dupuy Bruno and myself. Thank you, Ms. Patrica.
Board members, do you have any more comments or questions? Dr. Bernier, are you clear on where we're headed for this evening?
I'm clear that I'm going to get as many answers as I can based upon the conversation today to be better prepared to entertain the discussion when the item is pulled and we have additional chance to comment. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you to the team that presented today. I know that this is a lot of work, and I'm grateful that it is a living document that can be changed at any time. So grateful for all the work that you've done. Thank you. Moving on. Let's see. Yes, moving on. The next item on the agenda is the agenda review of tonight's action meeting. Dr. Bernier, please proceed with the agenda review.
You should have your questions. I've learned to confirm that the questions are in the board members' hands. For the board members who are participating online, I apologize. I don't know yet how to get you that, but they should be in your email. There were several questions that came in. One was in order. One was related to the consent agenda for executive services, approval of the consultant agreement with McLean Resources. The response came from our chief of staff and myself. The question was, I understand the need for a brief transition period to include coaching and orientation for various projects underway. Please explain the need for 6 months. Again, this is a consulting agreement with McLean Resources. This is Ms. McLean who helped develop the process for HR's transformation. It's clear that this contract has a 6-month cap, but it is a month-to-month agreement. And I do not suspect that we will utilize all 6 months, but rather than having to come back to the board on a month-to-month basis and potentially extend after a month, come back again, our goal is to be able to execute this on a month-to-month basis, keeping it under the overall approved cost. And as soon as Angela, Ms. McLean, myself, and Mr. Ramirez feel that we don't need these services anymore, we will step back from them.
Okay, so just, you'll let the board know? Because my concern is that staff in other departments are looking at the significant investment we're making in human resources, and they just see this as another thing for human resources. And I understand the need to do something initially, but I think it needs to be said that this needs to terminate as quickly as possible. So that's my concern. Thank you very much.
No, I appreciate that, and our plan is not to extend it to any length of time other than what Ms. Montemurano might need in order to ensure that she fully understands the plan, that she was not here when it was being developed and moved forward. I've been impressed with her ability to get up to speed very quickly. I don't suspect we're going to have a long-term relationship, other than a long-term friendly relationship with Ms. McLean because of her work to get us to this point. The other question revolves around F4, the approval of the superintendent scholarship agreement with Florida Prepaid. Can you please explain the scholarship agreement and the criteria for applicants and winners? That's a great question because I had multiple questions of my team when this came up. Florida Prepaid is going to provide up to 3 two-year college scholarships, each valued at approximately $8,000 for the superintendent to award to up to 3 graduating students. One of the 3 scholarships will be contingent upon the district engaging in outreach specific to the kindergarten families, including distribution of co-branded folders that are produced and shipped by Florida Prepaid to the district, and then we will advertise with our kindergarten parents. So that's a big long answer to say this. Florida Prepaid is sweetening the pot for us to have a relationship with Florida Prepaid and alert our kindergarten families of the importance of prepaying your college tuition if you're interested. No obligation, but we are going to advertise to our kindergarten parents that there is a prepaid opportunity for you if you would like it. In return for doing that, they are providing 3 of our seniors with a prepaid scholarship, even though their parents have not paid into the pre-plan program. So the superintendent and the school board, as well as my academic services team, are already in the process of trying to develop the criteria for the scholarships, and then we'll notify Florida Prepaid of the final selection of the winners. I've asked for us to look at other scholarship opportunities the district offers. I've asked for it to be regional, with one being offered in the south, one in the east, and one in the west, and paying particular attention, if possible, to ensuring that board members have no more than 1 scholarship winner. There's the possibility, however, that could potentially happen based upon the at-large members that we have. So the winners will have to meet the basic requirements to hold a Florida Prepaid College Fund. They'll have to be a Florida resident, valid Social Security number, etc. So there are those aspects, and they'll be bound by the terms and condition of the prepaid plan or savings program description. So while they get this money, they still have to follow the rules of the college prepaid program. So what is the plan after the first year? This is a yearly opportunity offered by Florida Prepaid. It does not have any financial impact on the district, so we believe we can renew this scholarship process on an annual basis. Is this sustainable? We believe that it is. All the costs are covered by the Florida Prepaid organization. And the final question was, what happens if the winner does not fulfill the program? The winners will be bound again by the terms and the conditions of the prepaid master plan contract or the savings plan program description and participation agreement. Consequences of not fulfilling the program will be determined by the Florida Prepaid organization, which normally is they stop providing the funds for the individual to go to school.
Dr. Bernier, I just wanted to let you know Mrs. Giovanelli has joined us, and I know some of these questions are coming from possibly her. So, Ms. Giovanelli, do you have anything at this time?
No, thank you. I really appreciate that answer because it just helped me understand what the program was, and I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
So our next item is L2, ratification of the agreement to purchase 113 acres of vacant land at State Road 82 in Fort Myers, Florida. Please advise why Lennar, the developer, does not want this property. It's a great question. Lennar committed to selling the property during unique market conditions 3 years ago. They have stated the benefit of multiple school. They have stated that the benefit of a multiple school campus in proximity to their development in this area would be of value to them. We expect that Lennar continues to build units in the area around the school campus will be a community selling point. There is a concern because the developer at large, as Lennar, is very thorough with their due diligence time period. Have we done our due diligence? If so, provide me with that report. Yes. Before we signed the purchase sale agreement, we entered into due diligence phase. The due diligence study was completed by Gulf Coast Design professionals and includes all the pertinent information on the property, zoning, utilities, environmental, etc. Due to the size of the document, it's about an inch thick. We did not attach it here, but we will send it to you in the next board update to all board members so that you may review the diligence. Is this in our 10-year plan projection? If so, please advise what the exact plan for the property is. Yes, the property will be purchased with the dollars allotted in the capital property plan purchasing budget. Currently, Elementary M in 2027 is the proposed capital plan, is the one building that is marked to be built on this property. So how close is the property to the 177 acres the district already owns on 82 that the Alico extension is going through to come through, and will it divide the 177 acres? The Savannah Lakes property is roughly 2.2 miles from the district-owned property on 82. So there's about 2.2 miles between where we're already in the process of constructing in this new piece of property. The student population density, both current and future, requires capacity beyond what the district currently owns on the 82 parcel. So how do we know the highway will divide the acreage? We provided an image in the questions, and I will make sure the image was going out in email as well. In the image that you have been provided, the new proposed roadway running across the property west to east will be in alignment to Green Meadows Road. The northwest corner of the property, highlighted in yellow, is the portion of the property being provided to Lee County to facilitate the construction of the continuous flow intersection being designed for the Alico Road connector. Current site master planning places future elementary school L on the portion of the property north of the new Green Meadow Road. The future middle school OO and high school QQQ will be located to the south of the Green Meadow Road. I certainly can make Mr. Malloy available for further explanation once you have the maps and the language to go along. I believe those were all the questions related to the 113-acre purchase.
Three Oaks. What's that? There's one at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. L10. Did you address L10? Oh, the Three Oaks property. No, F. 1F.
Oh, I do apologize. What was the plan for the property as well? Help me to understand when both of these parcels fall into the 10-year plan. The School District of Lee County property at 17250 Florida 82 is slated for middle school OO in 2026 and elementary L in 2027. The other property, high school QQQ 2029, is also in the capital plan. Can you give me an update on the Three Oaks property? It is listed and nationally advertised so that we can maximize the opportunity to get, is it nationally advertised so that we can maximize our opportunity to get the best price? The disposition of Three Oaks property at our last one-on-ones was briefed, and I will be briefing it again. We're preparing documents to bring to the board on January 23rd. Thank you. I didn't mean to leave that out. I apologize.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. The next item on agenda is public comment. Attorney Dupay.
There's one more item.
Okay. L10.
L10.
Continue.
The approval of the ITN number 1973673S for the Proximity Student Enrollment District Plan. If we are already moving forward with the middle school proximity for next year, do we not already have all the information needed? What information have we based it on? This item is the renewal to complete the final payments for the middle school proximity deliverables. So yes, we have the information we need, but we still need to pay our bill for Davis Demographics for having done the work for the middle school proximity plan. The district has already paid the majority of the budgeted amount for the proximity work that was completed in 2023. I will tell the board we are looking at whether Davis Demographics will continue to support us in this or whether we will move to a different type of system for our GSI data, because this type of proximity work, the GIS planning, the planning of students, where they're locating, families, how our district is growing, is vital for the planning process for things like the strategic plan as well as the capital plan. So we will always need the service of some form of demographic company, but right now this wraps up Davis Demographics' responsibility for the elementary and middle school plan. If there are any questions about any of the items, I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. Attorney Dupay Bruno, please address public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At this time, I have no one that has signed up for public comment.
All right, we will move on to the good of the order. Board members, do you have anything for the good of the order? I'll start with Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Two things real quick. I wanted to update a little bit on the last SPA, the Strategic Planning and Accountability, formerly CSI Committee. I updated in the last briefing. I just wanted to clarify one thing that now I have the minutes in front of me. The board had asked to look into, they made a motion to look into the opportunity for businesses to be able to voluntarily sign up their staff members to serve as substitute teachers as a function of a partnership. Essentially, certain businesses in the community could have a program with the district where they would lend some of their workers to be substitutes on certain time period. So it's something I guess they had brought up before, but they kind of wanted to reiterate that and see what we could look into with that. So I just want to make the board aware of that, and if any other questions, I can work with Dr. Savage and we can get some more information over to the rest of the board. Second thing, real quick, sorry. I took the opportunity to visit most of the schools in my district right before the holiday break, and while that was amazing to see the fun on many of the students and teachers and staff, one of the things that I want to share with you that I noticed at many of the schools, not all of them, but there was definitely an attitude, and again, I know it's a busy time of year, but I noticed there was a lot of people feeling overwhelmed, whether it's teachers and principals. I know that's something happening now, obviously, but just the feeling, as I said, I came away, I love going to the schools, we all love going out to schools, but it gave me a different feeling this time, and I talked a little bit about this to Dr. Bernier, but I just kind of wanted to make you guys aware of my observation with that, and one of the things that came up multiple times was obviously the effect of student discipline on that. Just, you know, there's a lot of things going on. It was just an observation I noticed that I felt it was only fair to the community to share that with all of you. So I know we have a lot of positive things going on, but as well, I want to make sure we're still seeing that as a focus. I mean, whether, you know, it's culture that we've talked about, as well as student discipline. I know that's having an effect on, you know, staff, principles. So it's something that I picked up on that I felt I wanted to share. So thank you. That's all I have at the moment.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I don't have anything at the moment, only because I just was able to get on for the tail end of with the questions. So just thank you. I'll go back and listen to the meeting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mrs. Patrica?
Thank you. I will save my very brief comments for when I'm there in person this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. Just real quick, I had EDAC last night. We met. There were 11 members. 2 guests were there. Mr. Gomez was our speaker, and he spoke about the district legislative priorities. He did a great job, and there was, participation within the members of the EDAC as well. He definitely had shared with them how, we need everybody, as we're out here and we're speaking, we need everybody to be engaged with the community, and they're all on board with that. The members also gave a reminder that prior to me becoming their liaison again, that they had asked that we share any educational bills that would pertain to diversity and inclusion, which I know when Ms. Morgan was there, she had brought that to us and shared that with us. And I made sure that they understood that that was being done and that she had shared that with us. But other than that, just hope everybody had a great holiday and we're back to work. Thank you.
Mr. Persons?
Thank you. I'd like to bring something forth for consideration of the board. I'd like to have the attorney and superintendent develop a new or amend a current policy to ensure a neutral viewpoint of the district, which would include classrooms concerning controversial subjects, political activities, social actions. It seems that, especially in this political climate now and with the season coming up, that teachers sometimes put out something for their students and sort of push them in a certain direction. And I think our classrooms particularly should be, neutral. You shouldn't get something guiding you one way or the other. It's just, we're there to teach the kids the academics and the arts, but not to indoctrinate in one way or the other. So I know there's a state law that's being worked on in this direction right now, but I think we need it in this district, whether that law ever passes or doesn't pass.
Dr. Bernier or Attorney Dupay-Bruno, do either of you want to comment at this time?
Really, it's to the discretion of the board in terms of what direction you want to provide the superintendent and I.
Board members, Sam Fisher?
Thank you, Ms. Langford-Fleming. May I ask through you a question to Attorney Dupay-Bruno?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Attorney Dupay-Bruno, sorry, I was just in the question for a second. Is there anything like this in any other districts that you're aware of, any kind of policy that's similar in another school district?
I am aware of one. Miami-Dade does have a controversial issue and student speech policy. That's the only one. I have not actually reached out to all of my districts to find out if there's anything else. That's the only one off the top of my head that I'm aware of.
Okay. That's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Persons, anything else you want to add there?
Well, I just feel that it's becoming a slippery slope in classrooms for teachers. And putting up anything, flyers or anything like that, I just really believe we need to be neutral. A neutral viewpoint on all controversial, political, social issues. And that's what I feel it should be. I mean, personally, I have bumper stickers or things in my house and things, that I like, but I don't think it should be in a classroom. Simple as that. And I think a lot of people feel the same way.
Mr. Persons, I would support that, some kind of a document written that supports that idea. I think it's really important not just to protects our students, it also protects our staff, it protects this board, but our main goal when our students are walking in and out of classrooms is to teach them reading, writing, arithmetics. And I campaigned on that, and I'll stick with that through my tenure here. And so I would be happy to support that. Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would be in support of looking further into that policy. Again, as I look at it, that our number one goal is the education of our students, and that's still what I'm focused on, and that's my reason for that. Thank you.
May I speak?
Yes, please, Ms. Giovanelli.
So I feel that we should be apolitical as well. I've always been told that when teachers teach, that you should not be able to know where they stand. They teach general, more apolitical, and share and teach both sides, and you really don't know where they actually stand. And I believe that we should have a policy in place that supports that, that we, as we teach, we are inclusive instead of exclusive, because one way or another, you're going to exclude another viewpoint when we should include all viewpoints, if that makes any sense. Thank you. So I support it. Thank you.
Is that all, Mr. Persons, for now?
I want to say we sort of took the first step in this when we decided to get rid of so many of acknowledgements type thing. And I just think this is a further continuance of that. And so that was my reasoning behind it.
So board, can I ask, would we all be in favor of the first steps on a procedure, or a policy being written to present to the board? Ms. Morgan?
So my question is, don't we have any policy at all that with respect to what staff can do in the classroom and et cetera? I mean, it seems to me we've got this. It's really a matter of where are we not following the policy that creates concern? Or where are there gaps in the policy that create concern? And through the chair to Attorney Dupuy-Bruno and the superintendent.
I'll leap in first. Yes, we have a number of policies that speak to what teachers can and what staff can and cannot do within their classrooms and within their work environment. If I'm understanding the request, it moves away from some of the reminders that we put out recently as we came back to school, had our principals renew and our site managers renew with their staff in this political climate moving forward with a political campaign, what you could and could not do. Politically, Mr. Persons has spoken to that in his amendment, but he's asking for us to look a little bit further to speak to some social issues and other issues that may be transpiring in a community, and the desire to keep some neutrality around those as well, if I'm interpreting him correctly. And I'll defer to Mr. Dupuy-Bruno, but I don't necessarily see this as a separate policy. It may be something that we add language to an existing one, but again, I have to get some more concept of what we're asking for.
Yeah. And that's what I'm asking for, because I just, I truly don't understand what is the difference, what it is that Mr. Persons is asking that we don't already have in policy. But I would also like to make a comment, and that is that we are becoming so delicate about what can be discussed. For example, at one school, they don't do Halloween. And I'm told that Halloween is not done because witches are bad, and therefore we don't we don't introduce witches into, let's say, a pre-K or a kindergarten classroom. I'm just, where are we neutral? At what point do we have nothing to celebrate and nothing to be sad about, nothing to express joy about, nothing to be concerned about. I need more clarity about what's being asked before I will support. I mean, yes, go ahead and do it, but you understand what my concerns are in doing this.
If I may, Madam Chair, just to add to what Dr. Bernier indicated, we have one very specific policy which addresses political campaigning, political activity on school board facilities, as well as one that specifically addresses campaigning on school board property. Those policies may be something that we want to look at just to tweak language, because my understanding from what Mr. Persons is asking for is limited to political activity and social activity in terms of not holidays or anything like that, but more in terms of being neutral regarding politics. Am I correct on that, Mr. Persons?
That's correct.
So maybe we do have something in our Civil Rights and Equity Guide that does talk about keeping classrooms viewpoint neutral. So maybe that's some language that we can add to the policy just to make it very clear. And that was something, as Dr. Bernier indicated, that was sent out to the principals last week, as we have done in the past in terms of reminding we're going into political season. So just make sure we're in adherence to the policy and to the guidelines.
Ms. Jordan.
And if I'm not mistaken, we just actually did that policy for the political. It was, a couple months ago that we did that. And we went over it and over it and over it. So, I mean, I thought we made it pretty strong when it came to what that policy was as far as the political aspect on school anything, or anything with district, period. So, am I correct on that?
You are. We had a lot of discussion. This is one of the policies that was brought forward when we did our Neola conversion, and it does talk about specifically no political activity. Can it be clarified a little bit more? Can we add some language about viewpoint neutrality throughout the entire district? We can take a look at that, Dr. Bernier and I, and talk to our teams about it. But if that's what the request is, I think we can bring something back to the board for your consideration.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, and I'll be careful how I state this, Attorney Dupree Bruno. So, and let me ask Mr. Persons this question. So you're looking for something as more of a definitive bright line rule?
You want to rephrase that slightly?
Are you looking for something that's more declarative?
Yes.
Where it's less interpretation is what I'm asking.
I mean,
or maybe more demonstrative, I guess I should say, maybe.
I mean, for instance, the new law that's being sent through the state legislature will only allow the American and Florida flags to be flown in anywhere on a government building, including schools, or their likeness. Okay, which means you could not have a Confederate flag in your room, or a Palestinian or a Jewish flag that might cause problems. Those really aren't political, like Republican, Democrat, or whatever. There's also the gay pride flag flying in a room or something like that. You know, I think we need a policy because those are not viewpoint neutral for the kids to be exposed to. So that's sort of why we put the social issue in there also. Okay.
Mr. Fisher, go ahead.
One more thing. So if I'm interpreting that based on what Attorney Dupree Bruno said and others, is we're taking some of the things we have and making it more definitive. This is what our policy is, our line, and kind of pull it together in one place, maybe an existing policy. That's at least what my interpretation of what you're saying was.
Mr. Persons.
Yes, that's why I said they could either create a new policy or amend a current policy, whichever would work out best for us, and so go from there.
Anything else, Mr. Parsons?
No, that's all.
Okay, Mrs. Morgan, anything for good of the order?
Yeah, and just giving an example helps a lot.
Specifics.
Yes. So just a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Angel Gomez for his weekly legislative updates. What a fantastic improvement in terms of keeping us posted on where we are. And it makes it possible for us, if we feel it's appropriate, to drop notes when necessary to people in the legislature. So thank you very much for that. I want to celebrate that this is all old. We haven't met in a whole month, so I'm just bringing back some stuff, highlights. The Tice Family Literacy Program completed their third activity year with ESOL parents, students, and their children. FGC Rock Team participated. Students won books through our partnership with Believe in Books, and the Lee County Library was present and registered all parents for a library card and explained the various resources available to them. I think that's a fantastic program, and I hope with the new leadership at the Gulf Coast Literacy Council and their partnership with our Title I schools and ESOL parents that we'll see more of this kind of activity. I want to highlight that students from 6 high schools, I assume they're high schools, attended the Florida Youth Summit 2023 Youth Agenda for Policy Action in Tallahassee. They went through a 2-day intensive investigation working with other students on a variety of pressing statewide issues, and they developed 2 policy proposals to recommend for Florida legislative action. I think it's great that kids are being encouraged to participate in Tallahassee at the legislative level, developing policy proposals and then seeking ways to advocate for them. So kudos to them. My only report is the Head State Policy Council meeting. There was no change in hiring for the empty James Stevens classrooms, so we still have more seats available than we're able to fill at this point. On an aside, though, is in speaking with Principal Nader, I learned that work is underway to expand early learning classrooms, something we may learn more about in future presentations. So I look forward to that. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. I don't really have anything for the good of the order, and perhaps we can talk about this more in our one-on-ones, but you know, I am a mom with 3 young children, and this is the time of year where after second semester, parents start thinking about summer camps and summer plans and things such as that, but also summer school. And that has been something that's been brought up to me in the last month or so, our summer school programs. And I think that this, you know, next coming month or so, if that's something we can discuss in our one-on-ones, what are the plans for summer school? What are our plans all the way from kindergarten to high school, getting students in 11th grade, catching them up so that we don't have to graduate students the summer after their senior year? What are opportunities we're giving juniors going into their senior year to catch up, if anything? And, you know, don't shoot the messenger, but when I hear from parents, you know, summer school's just a babysitting facility. I taught summer school. It is not a babysitting facility. It should not be that way, and parents should not feel that way. So I just wanted to bring that up to make sure that maybe we could have a discussion or even a workshop come February or March on what our summer school programs really look like, all the way from, you know, K to 12th grade. Other than that, I do not have anything for this afternoon. Ms. Morgan?
And in response to what you just said, it would be very helpful to see data about outcomes from the programs that we have been offering in the summer, particularly with respect to the money that, the ESSER money that was spent on the additional programs, because we will need to come up with our own money if we're going to continue with some of these programs. And so we really need to know what has worked, what the value added has been of the summer program. So thank you.
Mr. Fisher, then Ms. Jordan.
Sorry, one question. Just can I ask Ms. Morgan a question through you?
Yes.
You had brought up a topic about emails. I didn't know if you wanted to address that still or not.
I thank you. I did. So, and I'm not quite sure Dr. Bernier and his comment back to us really understood what I was asking. So there's at least one instance in the past, and it may have been before you, Debbie, I don't know, you may not remember, you may or may not remember, where we had so much activity in email on one issue that those emails were actually pulled and put in a separate file, and a generic response was written on behalf of the superintendent and the school board. Because what's happening now is we're getting so many. Some of us are answering, some of them are copying everybody. We don't know who's answering who. We know you're going out with the ones that come to you, but with respect to the board, I think we've lost all integrity with respect to responding to the Bayshore families, because we've just been overwhelmed by the communication. So it's probably too late to do anything at this point, but I know for a fact that at one point in the past, and actually Dwayne Alton may know something about it, where they actually created a file from incoming messages, and then we were able to respond to them without having them to go to all the individuals. So thank you for bringing that up, and I hope people understand what I'm suggesting. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
I do remember that, Ms. Morgan. We did that. We had a separate email for that, and everybody was responded the same way. So yes, we did do that. But what I just wanted to say, ask the superintendent, if I may, with the weather, I had someone text me, sorry to say that, but about the weather tonight, and if the meeting was still going on, because they were concerned about the severe weather, which I have no idea what that is. So that's why I wanted to bring it up and ask you.
I'm searching a text message as well. I'm searching a text message. I updated you on the weather just prior to the meeting, but I also have an additional update. This comes from the resource that we have in the National Weather Service that helps us with hurricanes and everything. Storms are continuing to be expected to approach our area in the next 2 to 3 hours. This was about 3:30 this afternoon. The primary threat will be wind gusts. Tornadoes are a lesser threat than the winds, but cannot be 100% ruled out. Rainstorms are expected to end around 9 p.m. No additional threats are expected thereafter. Sustained winds after the front moves through should be 5 to 10 miles an hour with gusts up to 15. We're still expecting current gusts from 15 to 20 up to 35, but they do make the mention that there could be a potential wind gust during particular thunderstorms of 60 miles an hour plus.
Okay. Board, do we want to have a discussion about this?
I just want to make sure, because when they send that, I'm like, I'm not the weatherman. And so I guess because of the fact that we have people, even our own people who work here, who may live across a bridge, you know, that would be my concern, but that's why.
One of my responsibilities as the person responsible for employees would be to excuse members that are non-essential this evening. That is already my plan. I did have a conversation with the chair related to the board meeting. We looked at the weather forecast, and a decision was made to move forward with the public meeting. We even expressed a concern between the two of us, and I'll let Mr. Fisher weigh in if he chooses. We even expressed a concern about, because Bayshore, the 10-year plan, was on the agenda, you know, we didn't want Bayshore to think we were trying to have a meeting in the middle of a storm so we could pass something that they didn't have time to comment on.
That's true.
So the idea of trying to find the time to make it up is probably the more difficult aspect of this. And I hope that people will make informed decisions. And I just would want to reiterate one of the reasons why we canceled after-school athletics and extracurricular activities was to free up additional drivers and buses to help us with the afternoon routes, as well as anybody currently with a CDL license within transportation has been reassigned and will be helping us this afternoon make sure we get our children home safely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher, do you want to add?
Real quick, yeah, agree with Dr. Bernier. We looked at information and looking through it with the information at hand, I believe it was in the best course of action to continue the business of the district tonight. In regards to any public comment, I mean, there's multiple ways of getting in touch with us via, you know, for comments to our own individuals and board as a whole. So that's my look at it. Thank you.
Dr. Bernier, do you have any more comments at this time?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, we will reconvene at 6, oh, what about, sorry, Attorney DePay-Bruno.
Well,
It's not in my
actually-
script, and I'm sorry.
Ms. Giovanelli and Ms. Patrica, I don't know if they're still on the phone.
I had asked them.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay,
did.
thank you.
Yes,
I
thank
have
you.
no comments.
And you
Thank
have none? Okay.
Thanks.
We'll reconvene tonight at 6 PM. Please drive safely. If you are attending at this point, we have no other business to come before this body, and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned, and the time is 4:28 PM.